You know, I have a lot of friends that come up to me and they ask me, why are you doing that Tea Party thing? And I don't know, I think I speak for the people that are here, and especially the people that are speaking. A couple years ago, just something happened to me. I thought, I can't sit back and do nothing. I've got to do something for my kids, for your kids, for everybody. To sit back and do nothing with what's happened to our country, I just can't imagine. And that's why you people are here today. And that's why we have people that have flown here from New York City, Montana, and as far north as Indianapolis, Indiana. Anyway, it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Jim Coyle. He's from Louisville, Kentucky. He's originally from the Philadelphia area. He moved to Indiana in 1990. He has worked in media and radio for the last 12 years doing traffic news, and he's a rock morning show DJ. He's a former vice president of the Louisville Tea Party, and he did that for 2 years before becoming an at-large member. He currently works for 105.1 FM Talk in Louisville, and he is preparing to start his own talk radio show, I think from 9 to noon on the same radio station. He has a lovely wife and 3 kids, and he told me that he's really happy to be here with all you patriots. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jim Coyle.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Just one small caveat. Unfortunately, I moved to Kentucky, not Indiana, so I couldn't help you guys elect Todd Young and those type of great representatives that you have helped send to represent us in the last couple of years. But I did move to Kentucky in 1990 from the Philadelphia area. But, you know, I actually grew up in a town called Medford, New Jersey. Most people have never heard of it before, so it's easier to say Philadelphia area. But Medford is to Philadelphia, I guess, like what Sellersburg would be to Louisville. About 15 miles from where I grew up, as the crow flies, was Independence Hall. But the town that I lived in was very much like Madison. And what a beautiful day we have here in Madison. Couldn't ask for better weather. The leaves are starting to change. There's a little activity on the water. It's a beautiful town. I discovered Madison when I was in college. A buddy of mine said, hey, you want to go to the regatta? What's that? There's boats and beer up the river. Are you coming? I said, okay, all right, I'm in. So, you know, I came up here for the regatta in college, and I've come up here many times after that just as a little getaway, a quick little easy getaway to relax. As a matter of fact, I'm staying here this weekend with my wife as we celebrate our 13th wedding anniversary. So, thank you. So Madison's a great little spot, and it reminds me a lot of where I grew up. Because although we were so close to Philadelphia, which is obviously a huge city, my parents were smart enough to get us away from the city so that we could see the changing of the colors and we could enjoy a good summer's breeze. There wasn't a big river running through Medford, but we had lots of little creeks and streams and cranberry bogs, and we spent a lot of time outdoors. And when you went downtown Medford, it wasn't that different from Madison. Family-owned businesses that have been in business generation after generation, local neighborhood people, supporting local neighborhood people, cobblestone sidewalks, old gas type lamps. It was a really neat place to grow up. But I also had the distinct advantage of being so close to Philadelphia. And throughout my early education, from grade school all the way through high school and personal time, we would very often take trips over to Independence Hall. And I remember as a kid thinking, wow, this is really where it all happened. This is really where it all began. It wasn't just a textbook. It wasn't just a story. It was a place that I could actually physically see and touch and smell the odors in that room and thought, this is where men sweat and fought and argued and bled and formed this nation. And it's a powerful place to visit. And as I moved away from there and came down here, I met many other great Americans in other small towns, and I met other great Americans who knew and understood American history, but unfortunately, Today, we've done a bad job of passing on our history. And that's why, as I raise my 3 boys, I make it a point to take them home to Independence Hall, to talk about our history, honestly, openly, and truthfully. Not a PC, watered-down version of what people want America to be, or what they want to pretend we were, but the truth about who we were, and about who we are. If you don't know where you've been, you're not going to know where to go. You have to have a foundation. And that's what I've seen the Tea Party do for the last 2.5, 3 years, is remind people of the foundation, which is restoration. When we talk about restoring American exceptionalism, towns like Madison, Indiana, Medford, New Jersey, that's where American exceptionalism lives every day. That's where people bring their kids up to go to work, to do your fair share in the community, to remember your history, preserve your history, and create a better future for yourself and for your children. And we're lucky enough that over the last 2.5 years, with the help of the Tea Party, that message has spread from towns like Madison and Louisville and Medford and every place in between. This is a true grassroots movement. I know Nancy Pelosi wanted to say we were AstroTurf and it wasn't real and that there's some sort of corporate funding. They want to find corporate funding in the Tea Party so bad, but you just can't do it because it's not there. And what people in the Tea Party have done was stand up and say, hold on a second. Let's be real. Has America made mistakes? Sure. Do you make mistakes in your personal life? Sure. It's not all about whether you're perfect or whether you're imperfect. It's more about what you do to correct your imperfections. It's more about what you do when you get knocked down. Do you stay down or do you get back up? And people who believe in American exceptionalism, going back to the founding fathers all the way up to today, are people that get back up when they get knocked down. They're people who understand what it takes to keep America great. Now, we've had just recently kind of a counterculture pop up with the Occupy Wall Street crowd. And at first, you know, it's kind of easy to look at them and say, oh, it's kind of a leftover hippie movement. They're just looking for an excuse, and it's easy to write it off. There's a couple of problems, though. Number one is that this counter movement and the media are now trying to take away and diminish what the Tea Party has done for the last 2.5 years, and now they want to prop up this thing that's going on over here. And it's a big problem for a couple of reasons. Number one, because the Tea Party is about events like today, restoring American exceptionalism. What's going on in Occupy Wall Street, what's going on in Occupy Louisville, which is happening as well, and Occupy Lexington and all these other little towns that have 30 and 40 and 50 and 70 people coming out, what's happening now is not about restoration. That's about what Barack Obama said in 2007, 2008. Fundamental transformation of the United States. That's unacceptable. If you love something and you want to preserve it, you don't tear it down and rebuild it. You restore it. That's what the Tea Party movement is about. Restoring constitutional freedom, restoring constitutional law, restoring pride in ourselves, in our neighbors, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our children. What's happening in this counter-revolution of Occupy, insert local name, what's happening there, they want fundamental transformation. We talk about returning to the constitutional rights. Is it right for the government to mandate that you buy a service or a good or face fines or jail time? No, that is not based in the Constitution. And we'll find out this year if the Supreme Court agrees with this. I hope to God they do. But that's what we're going for. Let's keep it constitutionally legal. What they're going for is the Constitution doesn't matter. Universal debt forgiveness. Forget about universal health care. Universal debt forgiveness. These people who are occupying Wall Street believe that when you wake up tomorrow, if you have a car and you've made a payment, don't worry about making another one, it's yours. If you have a house and you live there and you pay your mortgage, stop paying your mortgage, it's yours. Every nation, every country, every individual, we're just going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be zeros across the board. And they don't understand the flawed thinking in this. The guy who sold me my car, he's not an evil guy, he's not a bad guy, he's trying to keep a job and feed his family. We go to something like this, his job gets wiped out. Mass unemployment would ensue in something like that, but they don't have the foresight to see that. So the first time I saw them, I thought, man, this is just a bunch of leftover hippies that don't really have a clear-cut idea. They got pie-in-the-sky ideas. And I went down and talked to the ones in Louisville, and I've talked to some people who have spoken with people in New York. And yeah, there's a part of that. But the dangerous part is that these people are being used as useful idiots. And there's no nicer way to say that. The Democrat Socialist Party of America is funding them. SEIU is funding them. This is not something that sprang up overnight. This is not a grassroots movement. This is something that Stephen Lerner has been talking about for over a year. These people say that their protest is not an American movement. I was blown away when a leader down in Louisville told me on Tuesday, when they did Occupy Louisville, this is not an American movement. It started in Tunisia. It went to Cairo. And I looked at him, I said, so basically, your model of protest is the Arab Spring. Absolutely. That's frightening, folks. Because people who believe that that was a good idea are now having money put behind them to go forward and do this by the people who want to bring down America, not restore America. There's a lot of times when you don't want to cause trouble, you want to go with the flow. You know, it's hard to stand up sometimes because you don't want to be the only one. But we have done that for too long. In the last 2.5 years, I'm very proud to see a lot of people stand up and say no more. And not only that, but stand up and say, I'm going to stand and I'm going to run for office. I'm going to go support the Constitution. I'm going to support America. Because that's what it takes. We have seen some great success with people with Tea Party backing, getting hold of offices in the House, in the Senate, in our state capitol. And that's important. Because as you heard in the last couple of debates, the problem that Washington is having now, why they can't pass bills when Democrats still have a majority, is because now there are people in there who can't be bought. They don't care about a re-election. They don't care about special interest money. They care about the Declaration. They care about the Constitution. They care about America. We need more of those people in office. So we need to stay strong, supporting candidates, no matter what the media says. Don't let anybody tell you, well, yeah, in theory, that's a good candidate, but they can't win. Why can't they win? If we vote for them, if we support them, why can't they win? They can. People in the Occupy Wall Street movement have talked about destruction of the two-party system. Now, I'll be the first to admit there's issues in both parties right now, and there have been for a long time. But we are more than a two-party system. If we allow ourselves to vote with our conscience on what is right, as opposed to tying ourselves to a party. I've been a registered independent my whole life. Most of the time that means a Republican vote, but not always. If there's a good person to do the job, I want to find him or her and I want to put them in the office. If they're going to listen to what their constituents have to say and do it, no matter how politically difficult it might be, that's the person I want in office. That's the people we have to find. That's the people we have to be. No one else is going to do it for us. And we face an uphill battle because we don't have the big money behind us. Because we don't have the United Auto Workers, and we don't have SEIU, and we don't have the Teachers Union, and we don't have the Socialist Democratic Party of America throwing money into Tea Party events and getting political coverage on news. The only news we get is the bad news, which I still haven't figured out. Because in 2.5 years of Tea Party protests, including 1.5 million people marching on Washington, D.C., there have been 0 arrests. 0. In a couple of days of protesting in New York, there's over 1,000. They show up without a permit. the police allow them to protest and say, okay, just stay there and don't take the bridge.